Zara's ship dropped out of hyperspace with a violent shudder that rattled her teeth. The warning systems screamed red alerts across her cockpit as she fought to regain control. Her hands flew over the control panel, shutting down the noise and checking her instruments. Everything looked normal now, but something had pulled her out of hyperspace early. She checked her star charts. According to her navigation computer, she was in the Sol system, Earth system, the place where humans came from, though most people in the galaxy thought they were extinct now. The war had ended badly for them, or so the stories went. Zara was a Krillian, part of a proud warrior race that had conquered half the galaxy. Her people were known for their skill in tracking down dangerous criminals and bringing them to justice, or revenge, depending on who was asking. Right now, she was hunting the most wanted criminal in known space. Marcus Chen, human, the man who had single-handedly destroyed 3 Krillian battle cruisers and escaped from the maximum security prison on Targon Prime. No one had ever escaped from Targon Prime before. The fact that a human had done it was embarrassing to her people. The Krillian Council had put a bounty on his head that could buy a small moon. But humans were supposed to be dead. The last of their kind had supposedly died out 20 years ago when their homeworld was glassed by the hegemony. Yet here was Marcus Chen, very much alive and making fools of some of the best warriors in the galaxy. Zara had spent 3 months tracking him across 12 star systems. Every time she got close, he vanished like smoke. But this time was different. Her ship's computer had detected his energy signature before being yanked out of hyperspace. He was here, somewhere in this dead system. She powered up her sensors and began scanning. The third planet from the star showed signs of life. That had to be Earth. According to her files, it should be a burned wasteland, but her instruments were picking up green vegetation and flowing water. Someone had been taking care of the place. As her ship moved closer to the planet, Zara felt a chill run down her spine. Something was wrong. Her ship's systems were running perfectly, but she felt like she was being watched, like something was tracking her every movement. She checked her weapon systems. Everything was green. Her plasma cannons could level a small building. Her missile pods carried enough firepower to take out a city block. She was ready for anything Marcus Chen could throw at her. The ship's computer chimed softly. It had found something, a small structure on the planet's surface hidden in a forest valley. Energy readings showed it was inhabited, one life form, human. Zara smiled, showing her sharp teeth. After 3 months of chasing shadows, she finally had him cornered. There was nowhere left for him to run. No spaceport, no ships, nothing but an empty planet and whatever hole he was hiding in down there. She began her descent, keeping her weapons powered and ready. The atmosphere was thick but breathable. Her ship cut through the clouds like a knife, and she got her first real look at Earth in 20 years. It was beautiful. Rolling green hills covered in forests stretched as far as she could see. Clean rivers wound through valleys like silver ribbons. The air was clean, free of the industrial pollution that choked most inhabited worlds. It looked like paradise. But paradise was about to become a battleground. Zara landed her ship in a clearing about half a mile from the target location. She checked her weapons one more time, then stepped out into the Earth air. It smelled of growing things and rain. Nothing like the recycled atmosphere of space stations or the chemical stench of most colony worlds. She activated her armor systems and began moving through the forest. Her boots made no sound on the soft earth. Her camouflage field bent light around her, making her nearly invisible. She was the perfect predator, and Marcus Chen was her prey. The forest was alive with sounds she had never heard before. Birds singing in the trees, insects buzzing, small animals moving through the underbrush. On most worlds, wildlife like this had been driven away or killed off centuries ago. But Earth seemed untouched by war or industry. As she moved closer to the target, Zara began to smell something that made her stop dead in her tracks. Food. Someone was cooking, and it smelled incredible. Her mouth started watering despite herself. She crept to the edge of a clearing and saw the structure her ship had detected. It was a small house made of wood and stone, with smoke rising from a chimney. Gardens surrounded it, full of vegetables and flowering plants. A small stream ran nearby, its water clear and cool-looking. And there, sitting on the front porch, was Marcus Chen. He was exactly as described in his files. Tall, dark-haired, with the kind of build that came from regular hard work rather than military training. He didn't look like a dangerous criminal. He looked like a farmer. But appearances could be deceiving. Zara had read his file. Marcus Chen had been an engineer before the war, working on Earth's planetary defense systems. When the hegemony attacked, he had somehow turned those same systems into weapons that had destroyed ships carrying millions of beings. Then he had vanished, only to resurface years later, pulling off impossible heists and escapes. Now he sat on his porch, completely relaxed, reading something from a small device. He didn't look like he was expecting company. He certainly didn't look like he was ready for a fight. Zara raised her weapon and stepped into the clearing, her camouflage field dropping away. Marcus looked up from his reading and smiled. "You must be Zara," he said in perfect Krillian. "I was wondering when you'd catch up with me." She kept her weapon trained on him. "Marcus Chen, you're under arrest for crimes against the Krillian hegemony. Surrender now and I might let you live long enough to face trial." Marcus set down his device and stood up slowly, his hands visible. "I've got a better idea. Why don't you stay for dinner? I was just about to start cooking." Zara blinked. Of all the responses she had expected, this wasn't one of them. "Are you insane? I'm here to capture or kill you, not share a meal." "I know exactly why you're here," Marcus said calmly. "But you've traveled a long way and you must be hungry. Besides, it's going to get dark soon and the forest can be dangerous at night. There are bears." "Bears?" "Large, furry predators. Mostly harmless if you leave them alone, but they can be cranky if they're surprised. Your ship probably scared a few of them when you landed." Zara felt like she was losing control of the situation. This wasn't how captures were supposed to go. The criminal was supposed to run or fight or at least try to negotiate. They weren't supposed to offer dinner. "I'm not here for a social visit," she growled. "You're coming with me." "Eventually, maybe," Marcus said. "But first, dinner. Trust me, you're going to want to try this. I've been working on the recipe for months." He turned and walked into the house, leaving Zara standing in the clearing with her weapon pointed at empty air. She could have shot him, but something made her hesitate. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the incredible smell coming from inside the house. Or maybe it was the complete insanity of the situation. After a moment, she followed him inside, her weapon still ready. The inside of Marcus's house was nothing like what Zara had expected. Instead of the high-tech hideout of a criminal mastermind, she found herself in what looked like a museum. The walls were covered with pictures, paintings, and artifacts from dozens of different worlds. Books lined wooden shelves, their pages yellow with age. Comfortable furniture filled the rooms, all of it clearly handmade. But what really caught her attention was the kitchen. It was enormous, taking up nearly half the house. Multiple stoves, ovens, and cooking devices she didn't recognize filled the space. Herbs hung drying from the ceiling beams, filling the air with their scent. Fresh vegetables covered the countertops, some she recognized and others that were completely alien to her. Marcus was already at work, moving between different stations with the practiced ease of a master chef. He had changed out of his simple clothes into a clean apron, and his hands moved with precision as he chopped, stirred, and seasoned. "What is this place?" Zara demanded, though she kept her weapon lowered. It was hard to feel threatened in a kitchen that smelled this good. "Home," Marcus said simply, not looking up from his work. "I know it's not much, but it suits me." "You're supposed to be the most dangerous criminal in the galaxy. This looks like a cooking school." Marcus laughed, a warm sound that seemed out of place coming from someone with his reputation. "I suppose it does, but you'd be surprised how much the two have in common. Both require patience, precise timing, and the ability to combine different elements to create something new." He gestured to a chair at a large wooden table. "Please sit. This will take a few minutes." Zara remained standing, her fingers still on her weapon's trigger. "What are you cooking?" "Something special. I've been experimenting with fusion cuisine, taking the best dishes from different worlds and combining them in new ways. Tonight's menu features influences from Krillia, actually." Despite herself, Zara felt her interest peak. "You know Krillian food." "I've studied the cultures of every major species in the galaxy. Food is one of the best ways to understand a people. Your traditional spice blends are fascinating, very complex, lots of layers." He pulled a series of small bowls from a cabinet and began adding spices to each one. Zara could smell the familiar sense of home, spices that had been used in Krillian cooking for thousands of years. But there was something else mixed in, something she couldn't identify. "Where did you get those spices?" she asked. "I grow them. Took me years to get the soil conditions right, but Earth is surprisingly adaptable. Of course, I had to make some modifications to account for the different atmosphere and solar radiation. You've been here for years. 23 years, 4 months, and 16 days, Marcus said without hesitation. Ever since the war ended. Zara frowned. The war ended with the destruction of Earth. The hegemony glassed the entire planet. They tried to. Marcus's hands never stopped moving as he talked, adding ingredients to different pots and pans. But Earth had some defensive systems they didn't know about, systems I helped design. The planetary shields failed. Everyone saw the recordings. The shields did exactly what they were supposed to do. They made it look like the planet was destroyed while actually protecting it. A little misdirection, some carefully placed explosions in orbit, and suddenly Earth was written off as a dead world. The perfect place for someone to disappear. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. You're saying the entire planet is still inhabited? Oh no, just me. The evacuation happened before the attack. Nearly 8 billion humans relocated to colony worlds throughout the Outer Rim. As far as the galaxy knows, they're just settlers from various member worlds of the Federation. No one thinks to connect them to Earth. But why stay behind? Why didn't you go with them? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, focused on stirring something that smelled incredible. Someone had to keep the lights on, make sure the ecosystem stayed healthy. Earth isn't just a planet, it's humanity's origin point, our genetic and cultural heritage. Someone had to protect it. So you've been alone here for over 20 years. Not entirely alone. There are the animals, the plants, and I get visitors occasionally. Visitors? You're not the first bounty hunter to track me here, though you are the first Krillian. He glanced up at her with a smile. And definitely the first one I've cooked for. Zara felt her grip on her weapon loosening. This was all wrong. Marcus Chen was supposed to be a dangerous terrorist, a cold-blooded killer who had murdered millions. But the man in front of her was calmly preparing what smelled like the best meal she had ever encountered. The other bounty hunters, she said, what happened to them? Most of them stayed for dinner too. Amazing how a good meal can change someone's perspective on things. Are you saying you converted them, talked them out of capturing you? I'm saying that very few people are willing to arrest someone who just cooked them the best meal of their lives, especially when that someone takes the time to really understand their culture and preferences. He moved to another stove and lifted the lid off a large pot. Steam rose up, carrying with it a scent that made Zara's stomach growl audibly. She realized she hadn't eaten since early that morning, and that had been nothing but ration bars. Besides, Marcus continued, most bounty hunters are in it for the money, but what good is money if you don't have anywhere to spend it? What good is success if you don't have anyone to share it with? You sound like a philosopher. I have a lot of time to think out here. 23 years of solitude gives you perspective on what's really important. He began plating food, layering different components with an artist's eye for presentation. The smells were incredible, familiar, and exotic at the same time. Zara could identify the Krillian spices, but they were combined with things she had never experienced before. Why Krillian food? She asked. Because I knew you were coming. I've been tracking your approach for 3 days. Figured the least I could do was prepare something that would remind you of home. You were tracking me. Earth's sensor network is a bit more sophisticated than most people realize. I spotted your ship while you were still 2 star systems away. Marcus set a plate in front of her, then poured 2 glasses of something that looked like wine but glowed faintly in the dim light. Please, he said, gesturing to the chair again. I promise it won't kill you. Zara looked down at the food. It was beautiful, like something from the finest restaurants on the homeworld. Colors and textures arranged in patterns that were pleasing to both the eye and nose. Her mouth watered despite her best efforts to remain professional. This could be poisoned, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. If I wanted you dead, there are much easier ways than poison. Besides, I'm eating the same thing. To prove his point, Marcus sat down across from her and began eating. He closed his eyes and made a small sound of satisfaction. Not bad, though I think the balance of spices could use a little adjustment. Against her better judgment, Zara holstered her weapon and sat down. She picked up the strange utensils Marcus had provided and took a small bite. The flavor exploded across her tongue, like nothing she had ever experienced. Zara had to force herself not to moan with pleasure as the flavors hit her taste buds. The familiar warmth of Krillian fire spice mixed with something cool and refreshing that she couldn't identify. The meat was tender enough to cut with a fork, but had a complexity of flavor that spoke of hours of careful preparation. "This is impossible," she said, taking another bite before she could stop herself. "This is better than anything I've ever had on Krillia." Marcus smiled and took a sip of his drink. "The secret is in the preparation time. Traditional Krillian cooking rushes the process because your people value efficiency, but some flavors need time to develop properly." "How long did this take to make?" "I started the base sauce 3 days ago when my sensors picked up your ship. The meat has been marinating since yesterday. The vegetables were harvested this morning at peak freshness." Zara paused with her fork halfway to her mouth. "You've been preparing this meal for 3 days. The best things in life require patience and planning. But you didn't know if I would even accept your dinner invitation. I could have just shot you on sight." "I had a feeling you wouldn't. Your psychological profile suggested you were someone who could be reasoned with." "My psychological profile?" Zara's warrior instincts flared back to life. "You've been studying me." "I study everyone who comes hunting for me. It's a matter of survival." Zara Thex, age 34, born on the moon of Krillia Prime. Military Academy graduate, top of her class in tracking and combat. Dishonorably discharged after questioning orders that would have resulted in civilian casualties. Zara's hand moved toward her weapon, but Marcus continued calmly. "Turned to bounty hunting to make ends meet, but selective about the contracts she takes. Never accepts jobs targeting political refugees or petty criminals. Has a reputation for bringing in her targets alive whenever possible." "You know a lot about me." "I know you're not the kind of person who kills for sport or money. You're here because you believe I'm a monster who needs to be stopped." Marcus stood up and walked to the kitchen counter, returning with a bottle of the glowing wine. He refilled both their glasses before sitting back down. "Tell me," he said, "what exactly do you think I did to earn that bounty on my head?" Zara studied his face, looking for signs of deception. "You destroyed 3 Krillian battle cruisers. Thousands of people died." "True, and why do you think I did that?" "Because you're a terrorist, a human supremacist who couldn't accept that the war was over." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's what the files say, but tell me, do you know what those battle cruisers were doing when I destroyed them?" "It doesn't matter what they were doing. Mass murder is mass murder." "They were carrying prisoners from the refugee camps on Centauri 7. Families, mostly. Women and children who had already been processed for relocation to the Outer Rim colonies." Zara felt a cold weight settling in her stomach. "That's not in any of the files." "Of course it's not. The hegemony doesn't like to advertise when they make mistakes, but I have the sensor logs from that day. Would you like to see them?" Before Zara could respond, Marcus pulled out a small device and projected a holographic display above the table. The image showed 3 massive Krillian warships approaching a small space station. "This is Way Station Echo 7, Marcus narrated as the scene played out. "A processing facility for human refugees. According to the hegemony's records, it was supposed to be empty by the time those ships arrived." The hologram showed the battle cruisers opening fire on the station without warning. The structure exploded in a ball of plasma and debris. 17,000 people died in that attack, Marcus said quietly. Families who thought they were finally safe, children who had never hurt anyone. Zara stared at the hologram, feeling sick. Why were the ships firing on the station? Because someone in Hegemony Command decided that relocating refugees was taking too long, too expensive, easier to just eliminate the problem entirely. The hologram shifted to show Marcus's own ship, a small civilian transport, accelerating toward the battle cruisers. It was a suicide run by any military standard. "My ship wasn't armed," Marcus continued, "but it was loaded with medical supplies being transported to the refugee camps, medical supplies that included some very unstable compounds." The display showed Marcus's ship ramming the lead battle cruiser at maximum velocity. The explosion tore through the warship's shields like paper, setting off a chain reaction that destroyed all 3 vessels. "I didn't plan to survive," Marcus said. "The escape pod was an afterthought. I figured if I was going to die anyway, I might as well take some of the bastards with me. Zara couldn't speak. The official reports had painted Marcus as a cold-blooded terrorist who had attacked Krillian ships without provocation. But what she was seeing was something else entirely. "You murdered those civilians," she finally managed. "I tried to save them. I failed. The only thing I accomplished was revenge." Marcus waved his hand and the hologram disappeared. They sat in silence for a long moment, the only sound the gentle bubbling of something cooking on the stove. "The files," Zara said. "All the intelligence reports, they said you were a terrorist. History is written by the winners. And in this case, the winners were the ones who ordered the massacre of 17,000 innocent people." Zara felt everything she thought she knew shifting around her. "But the escape from Targon Prime, the other crimes you're wanted for. I've been trying to find evidence of what really happened at Way Station Echo 7. The hegemony has been very thorough about eliminating witnesses and records, but they missed a few things. Data cores, personal records, transmission logs. You've been investigating the hegemony for 20 years, and I've found some very interesting information. Evidence that the Way Station massacre wasn't an isolated incident. There were other refugee camps, other processing errors." Marcus stood up and walked to a cabinet, pulling out a data pad. "The camp on Rigel 4, officially closed due to equipment failure, actually bombed by hegemony forces. The transport convoy from Vega Colony, officially lost to pirates, actually intercepted and destroyed by hegemony ships." He handed her the data pad. Hundreds of thousands of human refugees, all dead, all written off as accidents, equipment failures, or pirate attacks. Zara stared at the information scrolling across the screen. Names, dates, locations. Detailed records of atrocities that had been hidden from the public for decades. "This is why you escaped from Targon Prime, to gather evidence. The hegemony has been covering up genocide for 20 years. Someone has to expose the truth." "But why you? Why not go to the authorities, the Federation Council?" Marcus laughed bitterly. Half the Federation Council was in on it. They knew what was happening and chose to look the other way. Humans were a conquered species, and conquered species don't have rights. Zara felt her worldview crumbling around her. Everything she had believed about the war, about justice, about her own people, was being turned upside down. "I need proof," she said finally. "Independent verification." "I can provide that, but first finish your dinner. We have all night to go through the evidence." Zara looked down at her plate, realizing she had barely touched the incredible meal. But her appetite was gone, replaced by a growing sense of horror at what she was learning. "How do I know you're not lying, that this isn't all fabricated?" "You don't," Marcus said simply. "But you're an investigator. You know how to verify sources, check records, follow evidence trails. I'm not asking you to take my word for anything. I'm asking you to look at the facts and draw your own conclusions." He stood up and began clearing the dishes. "Besides, if I really was the monster you think I am, do you think I would have spent 3 days cooking your favorite foods? Do you think I would have bothered learning about your culture, your history?" Zara watched him work, moving around the kitchen with practiced efficiency. This wasn't the behavior of a psychopath or a terrorist. This was someone who cared deeply about other beings, even ones who had come to capture him. "The other bounty hunters," she said. "The ones who stayed for dinner, what happened to them?" "Most of them are still here on Earth, helping with the investigation. Turns out a lot of people are willing to fight for justice when they know what they're really fighting against." "You turned them." "I showed them the truth, just like I'm showing you." Zara spent the next 4 hours going through Marcus's evidence files. Every document was meticulously cataloged, cross-referenced, and verified through multiple sources. What she found made her stomach turn. The hegemony hadn't just covered up isolated incidents. They had orchestrated a systematic campaign to eliminate human refugees throughout the galaxy. Entire settlements had been wiped out and written off as industrial accidents. Transport ships full of families had been destroyed and blamed on pirate attacks. Processing centers had been bombed and reported as equipment failures. "Sweet ancestors," she whispered, staring at a report detailing the destruction of a refugee camp that had housed 50,000 people. "How many?" "Best estimate, about 2 million people over 20 years, Marcus said quietly. He had finished cleaning up and was now sitting across from her, nursing a cup of tea. The official records show maybe 10% of that number. But why? The war was over. Humans were defeated. Why keep killing them? Because someone in the hegemony high command decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to live. Even as refugees, even scattered across 1,000 different worlds, they represented a potential threat. Marcus pulled up another file on the display. Look at this communication between Admiral Orcs and Defense Minister Thalan. It's from 3 years after the war ended. Zara read the displayed text, her translator rendering the military codes into clear language. The discussion was casual, almost bored, as the two officials debated the most efficient methods for eliminating remaining human populations. They're talking about genocide like it's a budget meeting, she said, horrified. That's the most chilling part. It wasn't done in anger or hatred. It was done as a matter of policy, cold, calculated, systematic murder. Zara stood up and began packing around the room. Her entire career had been built on the idea that she was serving justice, bringing criminals to face punishment for their crimes. But what if she had been working for the criminals all along? The bounty on your head, she said. It's not because you're a terrorist. It's because I know too much, and because I've been gathering evidence that could bring down some very powerful people. Admiral Orcs is still serving. Defense Minister Thalan was just promoted to the High Council. Which is why this evidence needs to reach the right people, people who weren't involved in the cover-up. Zara turned to face him. Why didn't you just release everything publicly, send it to the news networks, post it on the data nets? I tried that early on. The files were suppressed within hours. The journalists who tried to investigate had accidents. The data net administrators who hosted the information disappeared. Marcus stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark forest beyond. The hegemony's reach is long, and they have a lot of resources, but they can't control everything. They can't silence everyone. So what's your plan? Keep hiding here forever while people who should be in prison live comfortable lives. My plan is to find the right allies, people with the power and influence to make the truth stick, people who can't be easily silenced or discredited. He turned back to her with a serious expression. People like you. Zara felt a chill run down her spine. Me, I'm just a bounty hunter. You're a highly decorated former military officer with an impeccable reputation. You have contacts throughout the law enforcement community, and you're Krillian. What does my species have to do with anything? Because the Krillians were the ones who carried out most of these operations. If evidence of a cover-up comes from a human, it can be dismissed as propaganda. But if it comes from a Krillian war hero, that's much harder to ignore. Zara sank back into her chair, feeling overwhelmed. You want me to help you expose my own people? I want you to help me expose the truth. Your people, my people, every species in the galaxy deserves to know what was done in their name. Even if it destroys the hegemony, even if it tears apart everything we've built since the war. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. What we built was founded on lies and mass murder. Maybe it deserves to be torn apart. Zara buried her face in her hands. Everything she had believed about herself, about her purpose, about her people, was crumbling around her. The hegemony she had served faithfully for years was responsible for one of the greatest crimes in galactic history. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course, you can stay here as long as you need. There's a guest room upstairs. I should arrest you, turn you in, collect the bounty. Yes, you should. That's what you came here to do. But you don't think I will? Marcus smiled sadly. I think you're the kind of person who does what's right even when it's hard, even when it costs her everything. Zara looked up at him, this man who had been painted as a monster but who had spent 3 days preparing her favorite meal just to make her comfortable. This man who had given up everything to seek justice for people who could no longer speak for themselves. The other bounty hunters who came here, are they really all still on Earth? Most of them. Would you like to meet them? Marcus led her outside into the cool night air. The forest was alive with sounds, insects, and small animals going about their business. Above them, the stars were brilliant in a way that Zara had never seen before. Most inhabited worlds had too much light pollution to see the galaxy in all its glory. They walked along a path that led deeper into the woods. After about 10 minutes, they emerged into another clearing where several small buildings were scattered among the trees. Lights were on in most of them, and Zara could see figures moving around inside. "Welcome to New Haven," Marcus said. "Population 43 and growing." As they approached the nearest building, the door opened and a figure stepped out. Zara recognized him immediately from his bounty files. Grix Vormak, a Hegemony Special Forces soldier turned mercenary, wanted for desertion and theft of military equipment. "Marcus," Grix called out in accented standard, "this must be our new Krillian friend." Other doors began opening as word spread of their arrival. Zara found herself surrounded by some of the most wanted criminals in the galaxy. Assassins, thieves, deserters, rebels, all of them supposedly dangerous enemies of civilized society. But they welcomed her with smiles and curiosity, not hostility. Someone offered her a drink. Someone else asked about her ship and whether she needed any repairs. They treated her like a guest, not a threat. "How many bounty hunters have you converted?" she asked Marcus. 15 so far, plus a few defectors from various military and intelligence services. Even a couple of hegemony officials who couldn't stomach what they were being asked to do. And they all just gave up their old lives to help you. They all chose justice over profit. It's amazing how persuasive the truth can be when it's presented properly. A woman approached them, tall and elegant with the distinctive features of a Zentorian noble. Zara recognized her as well Lady Zetra Voss, wanted for embezzling funds from the hegemony treasury. "Actually," Lady Voss said with a wry smile, "I'm here because Marcus proved that I wasn't embezzling hegemony funds. I was stealing them back." Stealing them back? The money was supposed to go to refugee relief efforts. Instead, it was being diverted to fund the elimination operations. I redirected it to actual relief efforts on the Outer Rim. Zara felt her head spinning. "So you're not really criminals at all?" "We're criminals according to hegemony law," said Grix. "But sometimes being a criminal is the only way to be a decent person." Marcus guided her to a large central building that turned out to be a combination meeting hall and communications center. Banks of computers and monitoring equipment lined the walls, all of it clearly high-end military or intelligence gear. "This is our operations center," Marcus explained. "We monitor hegemony communications, track their operations, and try to stay one step ahead of their elimination teams." Elimination teams. The official bounty hunters are just the public face. The hegemony has been sending assassination squads after anyone who gets too close to the truth. We've lost 17 people in the last 3 years. "That's why you hide here?" "This is the one place in the galaxy where humans have the home field advantage. I know every sensor, every defense system, every hidden passage on this planet. The hegemony could send a full battle fleet, and I'd still have ways to disappear." Zara walked over to one of the computer terminals and studied the displays. It showed a real-time map of hegemony ship movements throughout the galaxy. Red dots marked confirmed elimination operations. There were dozens of them. "This is happening right now?" she asked. "Every day. The genocide never stopped, it just became more subtle." "And you've been fighting it alone for 20 years. "Not alone," Marcus said, gesturing to the people around them. "I have help now, good people who chose to do what's right instead of what's profitable." Zara turned to face him, her mind made up. "What do you need me to do?" 3 months later, Zara stood before the Galactic Justice Council, the most powerful legal body in known space. The chamber was packed with representatives from every major species, their attention focused on the evidence she had spent weeks preparing. "The documents you're about to see," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's sound system, "represent 20 years of systematic genocide carried out by high-ranking officials within the Krillian hegemony." The massive display screens around the chamber lit up with the first batch of evidence. Communication logs, financial records, military orders, all of it authenticated and verified by independent forensic experts. A murmur ran through the crowd as the scope of the atrocities became clear. In the viewing gallery, Zara could see Admiral Orcs and Defense Minister Thalan, their faces carefully neutral but their body language betraying their growing panic. The evidence shows that over 2 million human refugees were murdered in what officials described as accidents, equipment failures, and pirate attacks, Zara continued. The truth is that these were deliberate elimination operations, ordered from the highest levels of the hegemony command structure. She clicked to the next slide, showing financial records that tracked the funding for the elimination operations. The costs were hidden in military budget allocations and refugee relief funds. Money that should have gone to helping displaced populations was instead used to murder them. The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives demanded explanations. The Krillian delegation was shouting denials, but their words were drowned out by calls for justice. Zara raised her hand for silence. I know this is difficult to accept. These are my people, my government, my military. I served the hegemony faithfully for 12 years. I believed we were the guardians of galactic peace and justice. The chamber fell quiet again, waiting for her to continue. But the evidence is overwhelming and undeniable, and it gets worse. The next series of slides showed real-time intelligence gathered by Marcus's network. Current operations, planned eliminations, ongoing cover-ups. This genocide never ended. It's happening right now, today, as we speak. Hegemony forces are carrying out elimination operations on 17 different worlds. Thousands of people will die this week alone unless we act immediately. The chamber exploded again, this time with demands for immediate action. The Krillian delegation was in full retreat, their representatives hurrying from the chamber as security forces moved to block the exits. The individual responsible for gathering this evidence, Zara said, raising her voice over the chaos, is Marcus Chen, a human who has been branded a terrorist and criminal by the very people who committed these atrocities. For 20 years, he has risked everything to seek justice for the victims. She paused, looking directly at the camera that was broadcasting the proceedings to every world in the galaxy. Marcus Chen is not the criminal here. The criminals are the ones who ordered the deaths of millions of innocent people and then spent decades covering up their crimes. The session continued for 6 more hours as Zara presented evidence, answered questions, and watched the most powerful government in the galaxy tear itself apart. By the end, 17 hegemony officials had been arrested, including Admiral Orcs and Defense Minister Thalan. Emergency resolutions were passed authorizing immediate intervention to stop the ongoing elimination operations. Rescue fleets were dispatched to 17 worlds to protect refugee populations that had been marked for death. But perhaps most importantly, a special tribunal was established to investigate war crimes and crimes against humanity throughout the galaxy. No government would be exempt from scrutiny. When it was over, Zara found herself in a small office behind the main chamber, exhausted but satisfied. The hardest part was done. The truth was out there now, impossible to suppress or deny. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see Marcus entering, flanked by 2 Justice Council security officers. But he wasn't in restraints. In fact, the officers seemed to be treating him with respect rather than suspicion. "How did it go?" he asked, taking a seat across from her. "Better than I hoped. The tribunal will have full investigative powers and jurisdiction throughout council space. The elimination operations have been shut down, and there's going to be a complete restructuring of the hegemony leadership." "What about the people responsible?" "Most of them will face trial for war crimes and genocide. A few managed to escape, but there are warrants out for their arrest on every civilized world in the galaxy." Marcus nodded, a satisfied expression on his face. "And the refugees, the survivors. Full citizenship rights on any world they choose, reparations from the hegemony treasury, and protection from any further persecution." "Thank you," Marcus said quietly. "I couldn't have done this without you." Zara shook her head. "You did the hard part, 20 years of gathering evidence, building a network, staying one step ahead of assassins. All I did was present it. Don't sell yourself short. It took courage to stand up there and condemn your own people. It took integrity to choose justice over loyalty." One of the security officers stepped forward. "Mr. Chen, the council is ready to see you now." Marcus stood up, straightening his formal clothes. For this occasion, he had traded his simple farmer's outfit for the kind of expensive suit worn by diplomats and heads of state. "What will you tell them?" Zara asked. "The truth, that humanity isn't extinct, and we're ready to take our place in the galactic community again. But this time, as equals rather than subjects." "And if they refuse?" Marcus smiled, the same warm expression she had seen when he first offered her dinner on Earth. Then we'll go back to our quiet little planet and continue growing food and raising families. We don't need their permission to exist." He paused at the door and turned back to her. "What about you? What will you do now?" Zara had been dreading that question. Her career as a bounty hunter was over. Her reputation within the hegemony military was destroyed. Her homeworld would probably consider her a traitor. "I don't know," she admitted. "I can't go back to the way things were, not after what I've learned." "There's always a place for you on Earth," Marcus said. "We could use someone with your skills to help coordinate relief efforts for the refugee populations." "You mean it?" "I promised you the best meal of your life, didn't I? And I always keep my promises." Zara smiled for the first time in months. The idea of going to Earth, of helping to rebuild something good from the ashes of genocide, appealed to her more than any bounty ever had. "I might take you up on that offer." "Good. Lady Voss has been experimenting with Krillian human fusion cuisine. I think you'd enjoy her cooking." As Marcus left for his meeting with the council, Zara leaned back in her chair and considered the future. The galaxy was going to change dramatically in the coming years. The exposure of the genocide would lead to reforms, investigations, and probably more revelations about other crimes that had been hidden. But for the first time in months, she felt hopeful. Justice had been served, truth had triumphed over lies, and maybe, just maybe, the galaxy could become a better place. Her communicator chimed with an incoming message. It was from her former commander in the Krillian military, officially relieving her of duty and stripping her of rank and honors. She read it through once, then deleted it without a second thought. Some honors weren't worth keeping. Another message came through, this one from the Justice Council offering her a position as an investigator with the War Crimes Tribunal. Good pay, full benefits, and the chance to continue fighting for justice on a galactic scale. She accepted immediately. Outside the office window, she could see ships launching from the council station, heading out to stop elimination operations and rescue refugee populations. Justice fleet vessels painted with the symbols of a dozen different species, working together to right the wrongs of the past. It was a good start. 6 months later, Zara stood in Marcus's kitchen again, but this time she was the one cooking. The house had been expanded to accommodate the steady stream of visitors who came to Earth seeking answers, justice, or simply a safe place to heal. The planet that had once been home to only one lonely guardian now hosted a growing community of refugees, defectors, and truth seekers from across the galaxy. New Haven had become New Hope, a symbol of what could be accomplished when people chose to do what was right rather than what was profitable. Marcus entered the kitchen carrying fresh vegetables from the garden, his face tanned from working in the sun. "Smells good in here. What are you making?" "Zentorian comfort food with Krillian spices and human-grown vegetables," Zara said, stirring a large pot. "Fusion cuisine just like you taught me." "And the secret ingredient?" Zara smiled, thinking about all the people who had found their way to this little planet in search of justice and truth. People from dozens of worlds and species, all of them brought together by the simple belief that genocide was wrong and that someone had to take a stand. "Hope," she said. "The secret ingredient is hope." Marcus nodded approvingly and began setting the table. It was going to be a large dinner tonight, with representatives from the Justice Council visiting to discuss the establishment of a permanent refugee support center on Earth. As Zara worked, she reflected on the strange path that had brought her here. She had come to hunt a criminal and found herself instead fighting alongside a hero. She had expected to capture a dangerous terrorist and discovered a man who cared more about others than himself. Most importantly, she had learned that sometimes the greatest courage comes from admitting you were wrong and choosing to do better. The dinner bell rang, calling everyone to the meal. As people filed into the expanded dining room, chattering in a dozen different languages, Zara felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what the galaxy could be when people chose cooperation over conquest, justice over profit, truth over convenience. It was a good beginning.